Hello, this is Maxwell's. This is part 7 of my part tierlist, so we're going to move on to that starts with the letter G. Starting off with the Galapagos giant tortoise, which is the more iconic out of the two species of giant tortoise. It's British, so iconic resident of the Galapagos Islands, and while it might not be as common in captivity as the Aldabra giant tortoise, it still has a decent representation in captivity. I think I did mention this when talking about the Aldabra giant tortoise. I put the two giant tortoises at a similar level. I think it's slightly, the Galapagos giant is slightly weaker than the Aldabra giant tortoise. I think it's probably because it's more notable as being the largest tortoise in the world, and it has more variations in its appearance when compared to the Aldabra giant tortoise in terms of the proportions. There's said to be multiple different subspecies, or all species of Galapagos giant tortoise out there. Moving on to the Gemsbok, which is another base game antelope. It's the only antelope in the base game exclusive to deserts. It's the first. It's the base game Oryx. The Gens. There was pretty common in zoo games and to allow to have more than one desert animal in there. Now for the base, just the base game, it is a pretty reliable animal if you want a desert dwelling antelope. But in execution, it's in line with a lot of the base game animals. The texturing is okay. It's a little bit fuzzy around the edges. And to think on to the game in general, considering that the Gemsbok, as you mentioned, is also more of an occasional sighting in captivity. It's, I think, a lot less common than I think some people think it would be. Captivity. But if anyone compare it to other aspects of the game, taking into account the other desert dwelling antelopes in the game, it's less accurate than them, and I think less reliable than them, since they're more, since the likes of the Adax and the Scimitar Horde, which I haven't got into yet, is more, they're more common in captivity because they're more endangered, while the Gemsbok at the time of recording isn't a threatened species, it's least concern. So I'm going to put in good, it isn't, as maybe you don't have any of the DLCs, it's not really that reliable. Saving the European further and put it around here. Moving on to the Gharial, one of the two base game crocodilians. Bit of an odd choice for base game. It's a bit odd that the base game within the game in general doesn't have the highly iconic Nile crocodile. The Gharial, I don't feel that the casual person would be that familiar with it. It's also pretty rare in captivity, especially outside of Asia. I think I think that in Europe it is very rare, but North America has a better representation there. Out of all the crocodiles in the game, I do think this is the worst one. Yeah, I know that a lot of people say it's the saltwater crocodile, but Gharial, I think it's okay. I think this is actually worse than the saltwater crocodile, since although you can, I guess you can it's meant to be. When you compare it to its real-life counterparts, you can really see the differences. In the game, it's mainly this sort of olive-green coloration, when in real life it's meant to be grey. It's also, guards real life are also meant to have much a thinner jaw than what the model has, and has a lot more of a slimmer appearance. So, you could say there's another that's too more chunky than what it's meant to be. And also, it's issue with the fact that it has the same animations as the other crocodiles in the game, which behaving. The only difference that it has with the other crocodiles is the fact that it's fed fish rather than meat. And when in reality, gargoyles birds behave. It's not just with their diets, but they're more aquatic than other crocodilians, and their paw moves on land just on their tummies. So, because of the inaccuracies of the model and it's not being as unique as in real life, it's going in the crap category. The first habitat animal that's going there. I think I'll just put it a little bit higher up on the common death factor, since it's these would be a habitat animal, it's more interactive. Moving on to the giant anteater of the South America pack. It's an obvious choice for DLCs. It's an iconic South American animal, the largest Sinafra. Very common in captivity. It's an iconic South American animal. And the snail spirits need a game. And now I think the giant anteater is, I think, somewhat of a mixed bag in its execution. Suppose the model looks fine and the coloration is done well. I do think some of the anime, especially with the Torrent mount, is great. But on the other hand, it's not as shaggy looking as it is in real life. When it takes the undersides, to make the tail a bit bushy, although it's that's not detailed, unfortunately, and also the parts don't climb on the mother's back. I'll put in the good category, and it's a very reliable animal, but it unfortunately does have its issues. I think it's better in execution than the Borneo orangutan, so this will be where it goes. Moving on to the giant boring cockroach. However, you can tell there's not a good amount of exhibit animals for me to talk about this. I think most of the exhibitors in the game start with the letter G. So the giant boring cockroach, bit of an odd choice for the game. It's the only insect in the base game that isn't a beetle, and in general it's nearly a sense that it not only isn't a beetle, it also isn't a butterfly, and it's the only cockroach in the game. Support that bit of that this species was chosen rather than the Madagascar hissing cockroach, which is the main species of cockroach that you would see in captivity. I guess I wouldn't, since I've heard that it's fairly complicated for pets. I think mainly in Australia where it's found, and it's notable for being the largest species of cockroach. I think most people would tend to just put it in the music birds in the crap category. Not just with being exhibitor, but most people don't like cockroaches. I'm not going to do that, but it's another exhibitor that's more brightly coloured as fits in this dark shade of red, But in real life, I think they're meant to be more maroon, and it's a shade of maroon that's more closer to brown than it is to red. And also, the text isn't the best. Some get a bit in the bad category. I think the higher than this Switch line the Amazon John Centipede. So although it's not at the very bottom of the tier list, it's still pretty low because of how it's executed. Actually, for me personally, I don't mind cockroaches. I don't taste them or find them disgusting. And when it comes to move on to the giant desertary scorpion, interestingly enough, the scorpions are right next to each other. I have similar thoughts with each of them. The giant desertary scorpion is the desert-dwelling species in the game, and I guess because I'm not sure it's really a necessity to have a desert-dwelling species, but I guess if we want to have a desert-dwelling species scorpion, I think it would make sense to go for the giant desertary species, which I think is the most commonly kept desert-dwelling scorpion captivity. Also, I think really commonly found around the Sonoran, like to the Sonoran Desert, for example. The scorpions, I'm not too big into scorpions, especially I think tend to blend in with each other. I think both scorpions, I think they're okay. Could do look a little bit too brightly than what's they're meant to be like, and actually could be a bit better, but it's still they're executed just fine, and I think it's probably execution on the eastern brown snake. Giant forest scorpion, because of the choice of it, it is notable for being the largest scorpion in the world, and it's the only base game experience animal that's found in Asia. Interesting that there's barely any Asian. Now, since there's, I think, plenty of well-known Asian so surprising captivity that could have been in the game. With I think the main one that people would bring up being the King Cobra, which is is highly requested, or one of the most highly requested exhibit animal. I think I'm not so important is in captivity, but I feel like when it comes to scorpions, by far the main one that you would see in captivity, and I think it's probably the first species that people would think of is the emperor scorpion, which is another large and similar species of scorpion. It's in Africa. I think the giant is a little bit more interesting. I guess it's just another black scorpion, and while there are similar looking species of the giant desertary scorpion, part of me feels like there's less desertary scorpion than black scorpion. So I could be wrong in that, and I think also the giant desertary scorpion is also slightly more accurate. Moving on to the giant Malaysian leaf insect, the exhibit animal of the Southeast Asia pack. I note that it's a bit of an odd choice. Again, I think this is seeing as Asia pack is another deal, so that people feel like should have asked the King Cobra instead. The jump, I think it's I think possibly feels like I would have preferred the jungle nymph, which I think is larger, cool looking. And I think when it comes to leaf insects, the main species that you would see is I think the Philippine leaf insects. The giant Malay notes with being the largest species of leaf insect. That's in execution, this is another exotal that lacks sexual dimorphism. I think it's being that the model resembles the females, and I think the males are meant to be swimmer. And also find out that so it only looks like a perfectly healthy leaf. When when leaf insects can have those colors and would have patches of brown or possibly even completely brown to resemble a slowly decaying leaf. As much I do, leaves aren't always going to be fully green. If you're thinking of leaves from rainforest, tropical environments. If it's in the good cat. So I think about the scorpions. It's it's more interesting than the scorpion. So cool looking. Moving on to the giant otter of the aquatics pack. I guess it's a good choice for it. I think mentioned, I think the Asia short-clawed otter should be in the aquatics pack. And the giant otter, and it is a well-known species of otter. It is the longest mustelid in the world and is an iconic resident of the Amazon rainforest. It's more of an occasional sighting in captivity. No idea about such a so the impressive size and the weird demonic noises as they make. Model looks fine. Texture could be better. Good also a bit of color variation. More muted, but it's giants are okay. So I guess it's somewhat versatile. Once but South America, still wanting a large species of otter. So the bots of the great cats. Moving on to the giant panda, another base game bear. Pretty obvious choice, since although it's not that common in captivity, it's a highly iconic Asian animal and very popular. In the zoo such keep in which there would be large gatherings of people around the giant panda enclosure. Out of all the bears in the base game, I'll definitely say it's the best one, maybe because it's the only one that doesn't have a model that sucks. And the thing is, the model is okay. The action could be better. It could have some color variations. So I think it's still in the great categories. Because it's the giant panda. It's a very popular animal in the territory. So, and I do think the animations seeing a bamboo are great as well. So let's see. So I think it's probably. I think I'll have the neat. So I think it will be where it goes. Moving on to the giant tiger land snail, which is the only gastropod only mollusk in the game. Regards to giant African land snails in general, it's an obvious since they're by far the main mollusk that you would see in zoos. Largely, they're easy to look after, and and are easy to breed. I think it's a bit odd that the giant tiger species was chosen, since it isn't the main species of giant African land snail that's in captivity, but I think it was chosen since it's probably the largest species, and it's notable for its bright orange stripes, with the darker stripes, so the tiger would have. And now, I will say it's another exotel that's more brightly coloured than. It isn't to do with the show. I think the coloration of this. It's the main, but it body is meant to be a bit more grey. Here it's more light brown, bay, or tan. But what prevents us from. So you could catch. Very. The fact that it's the only mollusk in the game does make. And the animation of it slowly moving up the glass of its exhibit is a very cool animation there. So. But probably just so there. Moving on to the Gila monster. I think a fairly obvious choice for the base game is the lizard. It's an iconic North American lizard and is very common in both reptile houses and desert houses. And out of all the exhibits in the game, this will definitely have to be my favourite. I do think in execution it holds up surprisingly well for a base game animal. The texturing is done well, the colorations so on. The face could do a little bit of tweaking, but it's and long gave with the top. It's just a very striking out with the black and light orange coloration, and this is actually an exotic that's going to the excellence category. And I think I will sit. I think slice. Where is it? Yeah, this is. So I feel like as well, but. The excellent category, and it also gets a standout for being the only lizard based game that not only isn't iguana or monitor, it's the only base game exhibit lizard to have a desert themed exhibit ball, which I think is very cool, and so that's the American. It's in the Gila monster, but and the African spurfoid. Those are actually the only reptiles that are going in the excellence category. So I know that the reptiles in the game have best looking out of the game. I agree with that. I think most of them tend to look okay. Some looking better than others. So I find some of the reptiles need to be a bit overrated. Some models. Moving on to the golden poison dart frog. One of the two species of poison dart frogs in the game. It's a pretty good choice. It is the largest species of poison dart frog. It's the most poisonous one, so the most dangerous one. It's a fairly common in captivity. When it comes to fears in the game, I actually think it's one of the weaker ones. I think it's because it's not as glossy as it is in real life. And I don't think it has as much color variation as it does in real life. You know that you do get this very bright yellow coloration here, along with orange. I think it's also meant to have more of a mint green coloration, along with darker yellow, so that's more glossier. So I'll put it in the good category, since I think it's okay, but it could be better. I think it's better than the Scorp. I think it definitely appeals to me more than the Scorpions. I think it's also better than the Judgment even so there it goes. Moving on to the Goliath Beetle. So this is so the basically it's somewhat choice. So both the largest type beetles are in the base game, which is a bit odd since I don't feel that that's common in captivity. See, I mean, now that I definitely say that the Goliath beetle is present in captivity. But when it comes to beetles, I think by far the main one that you see in captivity is the sun beetle due to its small size, and it's an animal that's very easy to look after. Now the Goliath, so it's very, if what's a large species in the game, it's also very striking for the white smackawoo coloration, a little bit brighter. But I think in execution, it is one of the better base game invertebrates. So go to bed on the great category, but I think it would put the bottom, since it's still an exhibit animal that looks okay. Moving on to the Goliath bird-eating spider, it would is an iconic South American vertebrate. It's the largest tarantula because of the size of its main body. So spider jaw. So I will say, out of all the invertebrates of the game, I think this is the worst one, because it barely even resembles a Goliath bear spider, which is this dark coloration, which I guess sometimes, however, the others I found that actually was the opposite, meant to be a very, very bright brown. They're also a lot more bulkier than the model, which proportion wise it isn't really proportioned like a tarantula. As much as I'm not a big fan of the salmon pink bird eating spider, at least I could say it's proportioned like a tarantula. It's hard to tell because of how, the black background and how dark this image is. It doesn't tarantula, and there's also has the common issue that I have with the tarantulas. This is something that I forgot to bring up when talking about the salmon pink bird eating spider, but it isn't. The tarantulas, none of the tarantulas in the game actually look hairy, which so that's somewhat what to see. Features of tarantulas, that is bad, and this is worse than the common death adder, which even less accurate. So another entry for the crap category. Moving on to the Goliath frog. Bit a very odd choice. It is notable for being the largest onion in the world, but according to tierlist, it has no current presentation in captivity. There's doesn't say any current holdings of the Goliath frog. It was kept in the past, but I think because of its large size, and I think it's the fact that it's endangered, but it's difficult to get a hold of. It's not now that you would see in cap. captivity. And I think truly in the game this would have to be my least favorite one, since it because one of those of the Glypho could be bit of an inconsistent appearance. So I think there's times which it can be more brown. Looking heads. And I'm not sure if it would be bad, but I think I would have to put it at the mediocre category. I think it's lower than the boa constrictor. Moving on to the greater flamingo, the base game flamingo, which is nowadays not as popular with the price of the Caribbean flamingo. I think it's still. This is actually, I think, that's where a person should be. Since I think it's actually part of the stuff for me. Which being an African species of flamingo, it's also the largest and most widespread species of flamingo, since you can also find it in Asia and even the southern parts of Europe, the Mediterranean Sea. And it's actually the most commonly catched flamingo in captivity, especially in Europe. Now we'll see that with the presence of the Caribbean flamingo, it's less versatile and it's not as well detailed as the Caribbean flamingo. I think even less pink. That's one. It can't be pale pink. It's. I think it's still a versatile animal in the game, and it's still done fine, and so you can be the flamingo of your African section, while the Carib, so it's a bit more common in captive. So that's more also if you're making a zoo in Europe. Well, the Caribbean for me, on the other hand, you for the South America section of your zoo, and also it's in a zoo in North America. So it's going in the great category. So it's also best on the giant panda, I would say. Moving on to the greater rhea, which is the rat sites of the Americas pack. Pretty well, since now that's needed, since it is the largest South American bird and is very common in captivity, which you tend to see its being house of other large South American animals. Out of all the birds in the game, I think this is actually the weakest one, and yes, I will say it is weaker than the base game birds, and maybe because the wings is fine. The wings are a lot more pronounced than they're supposed to be, which is big as the common ostrich. But as far as the wings, they're mostly tucked into a lot of the time, even when running, which is it's more of a slim appearance, especially when compared to the other rat sites out there. It doesn't have that. The words put it in the mediocre. Saying there's still worse animals in the game than the greater rhea, but say not. Carrots. I think I would have to put it think around I think here moving on to the green iguana. Obvious choice of the base game, it is the iconic lizard, how widespread is in northern parts of Latin America. Very common in captivity as well. Though unfortunately, I do actually consider this to be the worst exhibit animal. And it's mainly because this should have been an exhibit animal. The critic would barely gives the critic runner any space, doesn't give that much climbing opportunities. Well, it can still see it resting on the plants, and it doesn't even have a paw, even though critic runners are semi-aquatic. And then again, it doesn't even have the aquatic tag. And is that the variants that are typically given can be added symbols to some of the smaller crocodili, such as the Cuvier's dwarf cave or even the spectacled cave, and their habitat animal. And most reptiles and crocodiles don't do that much. And what makes that can also do with a relations. You can house them with other South American animal. So you can even put them in a tropical house, have it freely roam around there. This iguanas should be habitat animals rather than exhibit animals. Also, there's another fact the model doesn't really resemble how green iguanas typically look, although they can be with some grey mixed in. Typically, such people may have an orange thing to it. And so, this is going in category at lower than the Goliath bird-eating spider. On to the Atlantic grey seal. It's been about the aquatic pack. I did mention the California seal. I think that should have been the Pinnipeds aquatic pack, since grey seals aren't that common in captivity. They're not even the most commonly kept seal in captivity at the very least, which that would be the common seal. I guess it's an okay. Says it's still one of the notable pinnipeds in captivity. The model, I guess it's okay, but I think it would a lot more colour. It's meant to be actually, as the name implies, grey. It's also more. So this is more specifically the Atlantic grey seal, which is the more of the two. Says she's a grey seal, and this little gold. See, so there, and so this. The Sinaka on the game, but I think it. Two birds below the. I think actually I'm 10 bird below. Actually, I'm good at just above the African crested porcupine. And finally, for this part, which is the longest in this video series so far, the grizzly bear. It's another one of the first time build for the game. And very obvious choice. It is an iconic North American animal. It's the most iconic subspecies of brown bear and the most commonly kept one in North American zoos. The brown bears are definitely the worst bears in the game. The model doesn't really do a good job of. Well, actually, a lot more chunky than brown typically are. The face is also cartoonish. Also the brown, two brown. I guess it's the slightly better one, though it doesn't say much. Since the grizzly bear is sort of a standard looking subspecies of brown bear. Or more to that when I talk about him and their brown bear in the next part. But it's still a bad model. It's more. It's a hard channel. It's higher up than these four, but it's still, I think, probably would be the lowest ranked habitat channel on the bad category. So there we go. Yeah, this is a very long part. So next time, go to the part. So let's start the letter, which thankfully don't have as much to talk about in the next part. So. Oh, and should mention that that hasn't changed, but when it comes to the crack category, it's starting to pile up, and green iguanas are so far the lowest ranked tier list, but will that change in the next part? Well, that's it done, so we'll have fixed.